Welcome, friends. Today, I wanted to share a little bit about why I teach yoga, or what brought me here. And the way I came into yoga was a little bit unconventional, I remember, and I think it was 6th or 7th grade, actually. My family had gotten us a membership to YMCA, and at this point in my life, I was not a sports person. I think I tried every sport underneath the sun, but nothing connected to me. I've always been an extremely petite person, and doing volleyball or playing basketball aren't really sports that favor short people. Although I had fun, I just never connected to anything that I would stick with in a physical manner. So when I came to YMCA, I was like, what am I gonna do here, right? I want to energize my body and work out and kind of get these feel-good endorphins moving, but I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to go in front of people and try to work machines and look like an idiot. So I figured, okay, well, there's a yoga class. I could try that. And I think it's funny when I picture like a 6th or 7th grade me going into yoga. I had no idea what I was getting into. And here I showed up, and I remember the teacher being super cool. And I fell in love with it immediately because since I didn't do sports a lot, my body wasn't extremely tight. So I came into yoga and I was like, man, I'm good at this stuff. This is for me, like this is my sport. And very ignorant of me to think that being good at yoga is being flexible or being able to do the poses well, but that's what kind of hooked me, right? So that was my hooking point, was, hey, this isn't too tough. This is something I can connect with and do, and I can show up for this, and I feel like I'm tapping into some type of physical movement, right? What I didn't know is that there was this underworld of peace and love and some type of weird understanding that began developing within me at the end of class, known as Shavasana. So after all of the movements, I would always try to get into like the deepest postures at first, because at that time I viewed it almost as a sport of choice. So it was like, challenge myself and find more things I can do with my body. And then when I settled into Shavasana, I kind of forget like what just happened prior to that. The pose that I just accessed that I haven't accessed before didn't really matter anymore, right? It was just this space of being that I had never felt before. So it kept me coming back, and it was kind of the seed that needed to be planted for the events coming in my life. So I wasn't super committed right away, but I did go to yoga, I would say like once a week, maybe twice a week, and it was my thing. It became my thing through high school. And in high school, I experienced for the first time of my life what anxiety and depression felt like. And I didn't really know where this depression started stemming from, but it felt very serious, right? It was like I could get out of bed, but the moment I started trying to put myself together or take myself to school, I just broke. And there was no reasoning or what I thought, there was no reasoning as to why I couldn't get myself to do these things that I was so used to doing every day in a manner that was easy, right? It was just supposed to be done. And all of a sudden here I am, and I can't put my feet on the ground. I can't get out of bed. It feels like I have lead boots on my feet walking downstairs to get something to eat. So I spent a lot of my time in my bed, a lot of my time trying everything that I could to get myself out of bed and go to school, but it ended up with a lot of days missed just because I would literally get to school and I would walk in the door and I would break. If something was asked of me, I would just break. That was done. Like I felt like I had nothing to give. I felt like I wasn't in my place of strength. And it got really scary for me because I have always been the type of person where, I might wait till the last minute to get something done, but if I have an assignment, it's getting done. And it got to the point where I didn't care about anything. Nothing was getting done, right? There was like no point of anything. And if you've been in this space, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Everything loses its vibrancy and you just don't care. The energy that's needed to care about things, like you just don't have it. So you're just like, whatever, I'm here. And I'm just coasting, right? Barely coasting. And that was terrifying for me, especially because I didn't know that people that young or at that age could experience depression or anxiety. And luckily I had the most caring mother in the world, and this was something that she had experienced before, so she knew exactly how to talk to me. And you know, the biggest phrase that I remember her sharing with me is, "This too shall pass, this too shall pass." And the first couple times she said it, I was like, no, like this is my now, like this is forever, and this is horrible, and I don't know how I'm going to do anything with my life. And it was very saddening to me. So one day it got to the point, I remember I was laying outside, basically in Shavasana, right? Like I had given up on the world. I'm laying down in the grass, my body is out wide, and I made myself think of a couple things that brought me happiness, because at this point I had lost everything. I was like, nothing matters, nothing can fix this, life sucks, and I'm stuck here. And it turns out I wasn't, thank God. And the two things that I came up with, the two things that kind of brought me joy before I entered this state of depression was warmth, right? And as I thought of this, I was lying on the ground underneath the sun. It was a summer day, and I was like, this is giving me something that I need, like this warmth. I had a very cold depression of sorts. So warmth and movement. If you have ever experienced depression, movement is something that you cannot just do, right? It feels so hard. But I remember when I would be in a yoga class, you start out slow. So maybe you start out in child's pose. And I could come into child's pose, you know, that part wasn't hard. But at that point in time, I think a year or two before, I had dabbled in hot yoga. So that had become my resource during this depression. I was like, that's warmth and that's movement right there. So I went to hot yoga religiously. I remember thinking to myself, if you cannot do anything today, you will at least do yoga. And there was a lot of defeat in that, because you know, some days I wouldn't be able to bring myself to school to show up because I would just break. And I was like, do I deserve yoga if I didn't even make it to school? And that question had a lot of weight in it, but it got to the point where I was like, dude, you gotta just do whatever you need to do to keep going, to find, you know, that sense of lightness or enjoyment that you used to have in your everyday life. So even if I did nothing, my mom was very understanding, right? She was like, you can, she was not like, you know, you can go to yoga, but you can't go to school. She was just like, do what you need to do, and we'll get through this. And that meant a lot to me. So I would go to yoga every day, literally every day, hot vinyasa, and sometimes I went twice a day. And there would be these little glimpses of I'm in the right place, or I'm moving and I'm not stuck, or in Shavasana, my body would tingle. And that was amazing to me because my body always felt very lethargic. So the idea that there's ecstatic motion within me really brought me something, right? It kind of brought me back to the sense of being alive again. So I would go to yoga even if it was only for like a millisecond glimpse of light, of happiness, and I would thrive off that. So I made it part of my life then to go to hot vinyasa as much as I could, right? Cultivate that sense of aliveness. And one day I was at home, and it was a day that I had not gone to school and I hadn't went to yoga yet. I was probably waiting for the next class, and I got on my ground and I started doing yoga poses. And I set up my camera and I started taking pictures of myself in these yoga poses, because I figured, why not have something that I can look at to remind myself of what I truly am, a being of light, of happiness, and yoga brought me happiness. So doing those poses and taking those pictures, I would see myself almost like smile, or I could see myself, my inner body gleaming in these silly just yoga pictures that I took in my room. And I realized looking at them, I was like, dude, like this is it. Like this is leading you back to yourself. This has some potency to it. So I would continue to take pictures of myself doing yoga just as a sense of revival, being able to look at myself in a new light. Myself on the bed, sleeping for 8 hours of the day and then again 8 hours of the night. So these photos almost became my mirror back into myself, and not my mirror into my shameful, lazy self, but a mirror into myself where I had something that was blossoming again, something that was giving me a sense of purpose again. And I don't remember particularly how or when I came out of my depression. Depression is a very gray matter thing. I feel like I don't remember a lot of it, but what I do remember is this meter of the more that I did yoga, the better that I felt. So I made it a part of my everyday life. And I found that this shit is real. I don't know what it is about it, but there's something magic in it. And one day I went to a yoga class. It was a hot vinyasa class. And I kind of just offered my practice up. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but there's a form of yoga and it's called bhakti, or devotional yoga. And this was a form of bhakti for me, right? Devotional yoga, just offering it up to, if there's a God, if there's a higher source, whatever it is that's bigger than me, this is for you so you can help me get back to me, right? I didn't want the weight of it being my responsibility on my back, so I was like, this is for you. I'll do my best, and like if I start to think down, I will remind myself that it's not for me, it's for something bigger than myself. And after that class, serendipitously, I was laying on my mat and a group of the yoga teachers came over to me and they asked me if I would like to join them in their next yoga teacher training. And I was 17 years old at that time, and I was like, no, you don't understand, I'm not old enough to do that. I was like, I'm only 17, I can't do that. And they were like, yeah, you can, why don't you join us? And I was like, okay, so I ran home to my mom and I was like, Mom, I know this is gonna be a huge question, right? Yoga teacher training is not pocket change. I was like, but I really feel like I need to do this. And she was able to see how that had helped me so much, and she was like, I think it's a good idea, let's do it. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life. I learned so much about yoga philosophy and why I was suffering and what to do about it, that I felt like I had some influence over my life again, and getting your life back after being in a state of depression is a whole new world. And ever since that, I know that depression isn't something that just goes away, right? It's almost like something that you live with and that you cope with. And I was thankfully able to release myself from medication pills. I was never about medicine at all, but my mom had explained to me over and over that depression was an imbalance in the chemicals of your brain. And that made me feel like I wasn't crazy. I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. There's an imbalance up there. So, I did what I had to do. I stuffed my shame away and I got on some medication, but I told myself, if you're gonna take this medication, you're also going to take yoga as medicine. So I did, and I know that's not how it works for everyone, but it really gave me some tools that I could stuff in my back pocket to wean myself off of depression medicine. And I have found that when I stay within my routine, my life isn't perfect, but I have a certain perspective on it that is a little brighter. And when I feel myself kind of getting down in the dumps or kind of steeping back towards depression, I now know I'm not crazy, but I'm also out of routine. And that's something really important for me, because now I feel like I have some reins on my own experience here on earth through the practice of yoga and through the study of yoga philosophy. And it has just lightened my life up, and I couldn't think of any other time that I would want to spend my time rather than sharing it and passing it forward. And it's truly so special to me that I get to share these practices with you. And I know that I don't know exactly how it's working for you or if it's helping you, but I trust the practice in and of itself more than I trust me being able to heal you, right? It's never been about that. It's just been about doing the practice and letting it move you towards a place of self-love and self-appreciation and a deeper understanding. And it's just been beautiful. I don't see myself stopping. I've actually continued my studies into yoga therapy to become a yoga therapist for that specific reason, so I can create personalized practices for people based on their physical, mental, emotional, behavioral state, so that they can kind of zoom towards self-healing without as many obstacles. You know, there's a goal and a pathway. And I myself continue to use yoga therapy. It's never over, right? I'm always a student before I'm a teacher. And with that, I have found some sort of balance and ease and uplifting from my depths. And that was just something that I never thought could happen when I was in that space of depression. But it's not so scary for me anymore. And that's huge. And that is my story. I would love to hear some of you all's stories. So if you want to let me know how you came to yoga or why you do yoga, let's share some more. Let's share our journeys and our paths. Let me know. Maybe you comment or send a message. Let's stay in touch, in connection. Yoga is unity. Namaste.